Well, hello there. Welcome to the Chain Club, where we're going to talk about chains. Not really these type of chains. Food chains, how energy is transferred from the sun, to all sorts of other living creatures. But before we even do that, we need to get our stuff. So grab yourself one of these. The bag to grab. It's got stuff like 2 cups, stick, clay, papers, pictures, among other stuff. This is inside of the envelope. It's a little food chain card. Grab that. You know what else you need? A cup of water. Who doesn't have a cup of water? Grab one. A plate. Who doesn't have a plate? Grab those. Not included. But we totally need the stuff to start our high-touch, high-tech program called chain stuff. It's not really this. We're gonna talk about food chain, guys. But before we talk about the food chain, we're gonna talk about living creatures. You can kind of group them up into 3 groups called producers, consumers, and decomposers. First, producers are always plants.
Why are producers always plants?
Well, these producers, they don't need any other living thing that they go around eating. They don't need to eat anything. All they need is just the sun. Gives them the energy to make their own food. They make their own food. But not only is it food for themselves, it becomes food for other animals that we call consumers, since they consume, which means to eat. So then we got the consumer group as well. And those are always animals. And them being always animals, they usually eat the producers. When they eat it, they consume. That's why we call them consumers. But then also other animals eat them, right? So it's kind of like a whole, eating frenzy. They just eat everything, right? So since they eat, they're called consumers. But there could be different types of consumers. Like as an example, the producer, the plant, right, gets eaten by a little caterpillar. And then another bird comes in and swoops in and grabs the caterpillar, right? So the caterpillar is a consumer that eats the producer, the plant, but the bird is also another consumer that eats that caterpillar, which is a consumer, right? So it could go either way, eating the producer or eating other consumers, right? And then finally we got the decomposers, which are the ones that also eat other things, but it's not living things. It's usually dead things, all right? So they usually eat anything that's a dead animal or a dead plant, but what it does is it in return gives some fresh nutrients into the ground, into the soil, for more brand new plants to be able to grow. An example of a decomposer is my good friend Mr. Mushroom. He's a fun guy. That was terrible. But as you can see here is a picture of a mushroom basically eating on a dead tree, right? And then he takes the nutrients from there, gives it back to the soil, which in turn is very good nutrients for new plants. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna play around with a cool little decomposer that you got at home. It's called yeast. We're gonna do a yeast beast experiment. Ow. We're gonna do a yeast beast experiment where we're gonna see the proper environment for these yeast to be able to thrive. So here we go, get your chains. Don't get your chains, I was just kidding. I'll have to take this off. So let me take this off and I'll see you there. Then let's do the yeast beast experiment. Don't turn into a beast. But these are the parts that we're gonna be needing for this experiment. Grab yourself the plate. The 2 stickers with powders inside of them, one that's green, one that's blue, salt and sugar. Also, there are labels that say salt and sugar. Grab those. And then this one here is the yeast, the bag of yeast. Grab also the stick, cup of water, and the 2 cups. These are 2 cups together that are like so. Then let's get started. First thing you want to do is we want to label these cups. So grab the labels and peel them off. Just go to a corner And just go ahead and take it off. Sometimes it helps if you bend it. If you bend it, you can find a crease eventually, but just peel that off. And we're just gonna put it on one of these cups. Doesn't matter where. You can put it right on the front, like so. And then same thing with the other. Okay, see how I'm bending this? When I bend it, it opens it up a little bit, making it a lot easier for me to peel off. And I'm gonna put that right over here. Okay. Then the excess papers you don't need, you can move them to the side. So we got here a cup that says salt, a cup that says sugar, and inside of both we're going to be putting some of this yeast. We're gonna put half in one and half in the other, okay? So it doesn't have to be specific, but try to kind of see, like make it as even as possible between each. Remember, half in one and half in the other. And so we're gonna take some of that, just kind of go ahead, open it up and pour it in. Okay, and do the same thing with the other one. Okay, and if you feel like there's too much in one, then start putting it in the other. Just to try to even it out. Again, it does not need to be exactly half, but good enough to where it's just about the same. So these kind of look about the same, maybe just a little bit less from this side. That's good. Okay. Good. Then what we want to do next is we want to put a little bit of water inside of them. Now, the amount of water that we want to put is close to about a little over halfway, about 3/4 of this filled up. So just take your water and just go ahead and pour it in nice and slowly. Once you get to about halfway, add a little bit more until it gets about 3/4, and that's good. Just about there. Okay. Same thing with your other cup. Okay. And just about there. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to mix this with this water, okay? So eventually what we want to do, and the purpose of this experiment, is we want to see which environment is most ideal for this yeast to be able to thrive. Because remember, yeast is a type of decomposer, meaning it needs to eat something in order for it to survive. Okay, so among these two, salt and the sugar, which one is the yeast going to thrive off of? Which one is it going to be eating? And you could see which one it's going to be eating because there is something else that's going to happen as a result of it eating either the salt or the sugar, okay? So this is gonna take a little bit of time to mix, but what we want is we want to get rid of all the chunks. You see how chunky that is? Ooh, we don't want it to be too chunky. You want it to be kind of like chocolate milk. But don't drink it. Don't drink this. This is not chocolate milk, guys. But we want most of that, those chunks to be gone. And I think we are getting to be about good. Now, if you still have a little bit of bumps here and there, don't worry too much about it, okay? But we just want to mix it for a good amount of time. So again, we want to find out which one is going to allow the yeast to really thrive. Is it when it has some salt in it, or is it when it has some sugar inside of it, right? So inside of the one that says salt, well, it's the same color as what it says, which is green. So in the green one, we're gonna put the green sticker, which is salt, that's inside of here. So we're gonna take that, go ahead and put it inside of there. And mix it, okay? Mix it with there. See what's gonna happen with the yeast. Is the yeast gonna eat the salt? I don't know. You might see a reaction happening if it does eat it. But we also wanna see, what about the sugar? As you can see, again, the color is blue, so we're gonna use the blue sticker, which is inside of here, it's the sugar. So go ahead and open that up and pour it right in there. And do the same thing, mix it. Okay, and we're mixing it around again just to see, or rather once it's mixed with the yeast is either gonna eat the salt or the sugar, and we won't find out now, but a little bit later we will be able to find out. But once you're done with that, after we finish mixing, then let's see what's gonna happen. You guys ready? Nothing. You have to wait. So, you know what we're gonna do? We are just gonna put these guys to the side in a place where we're not gonna spill it. So this is where our plate will come in nice and handy. Just go ahead and take both, put both on the plate, and put it in a safe place where you won't accidentally nudge it or spill it, right? We don't want that to happen. So again, just put it to the side, and most likely by the end of today's lesson, we're gonna be able to see some sort of reaction happen with either the salt or the sugar, which shows, hey, this is a good environment for the yeast to thrive, or it ate basically the salt or the sugar. So let's find out. Let's be patient and find out. You might be wondering, why does making Manoa look so good? I gotta admit, I do look good. I don't know what it is. I think it's these chains that I have here, but why is it that I have these chains? Well, it's because I'm just kidding, guys. The bottom line is we're talking about food chain, okay? Just like a chain is connected by the links. Same thing with the food chain. It's connected by the transferring of energy throughout these animals. And again, we call that the food chain.
What is a food chain?
Great Scott! That was a wonderful question. I don't know who Scott is, but anyway, all energy comes from the sun. Then we got the producers, right? Like the plants, right? So the energy gets transferred from the sun to the producers, like the plants and the trees and so on and so forth, but they get eaten by the consumers. Now, interestingly enough, there's only one group of producers. Plants, always plants. But the consumers, you can break it down into different groups of consumers. We call them primary consumer, secondary consumer, and tertiary consumer. The third one, in other words. Okay, so the transfer of energy from the plants to the first consumer being like, let's say a mouse. A mouse likes to eat seeds and little tiny plants and things like that, right? So that's the primary, because they're eating from the seeds as an example, right? So that's the primary consumer. Another example of these are what we call herbivores, like rabbits and deers. But let's take that mouse. There's something else that's gonna eat that mouse. It's not me. It's gonna be disgusting. It's probably gonna be a snake. Snake comes over, gets him. Since the snake ate that consumer, the secondary consumer, right? He's the second in line, right? But then there's another one in line. Let's say a raptor comes over and eats that snake. That's the third one in line, and so we call it the tertiary consumer. So it just goes down the line, and this line, this transferring of energy from the plant to the mouse, from the mouse to the snake to the raptor, the energy is being transferred. This altogether is called the food chain. Okay, so we're gonna play a little game to see the food chain between multiple animals that are consumers. The three different types of consumers: primary, secondary, and tertiary. Here we go. Chain. Let's do the chain food experiment here. Okay? A little game I like to do. So these are the two things you need: this stack of pictures that we have, and this one came from the envelope, your food chain chart. Okay? So we're going to basically see among the animals that are inside of this stack, which ones are the producers and the consumers. And remember how we talked about there are the three different types, I guess you could say, different groups of consumers: the primary, the ones that eat the producers; the secondary, the ones that eat the primary consumers; and the tertiary, the third one in line of eating all of these others that have consumed on, ultimately to the producers. And of course, everything comes down from the sun. But once you have those two, then let's go ahead and take our stack of pictures of animals. Just take off the rubber band and just start taking out the pictures and lay them out around you so that you can start to kind of see what types of animals and insects we have. All right, so we got here a tree, grass, snake, the grasshopper, and the frog. All right, so if you look at your piece of paper here, all the way on the left is the column that says producer. Remember when we talked about producers? Do they need anything else to eat in order for them to survive? They don't need any other living thing to help them to survive. They only need the sun. So which one needs the sun? Oh, this guy? It's always a plant or a tree. So which one's a plant or a tree? This one's easy. Well, for sure, grass is a type of plant. A tree is a tree. And the corn is also a producer. Then we come to the primary consumer. That's this part right here. So which of these animals and insects are the first ones to eat grass or the tree or the corn? And something that could help out is, you can see there's a little bit of color that it has here. We have the blue, the yellow, and the red. So you can kind of help yourself there. So of the blue, I got a blue here, blue, blue. Which of these do you think is the first one to eat the grass? Is it the grass frog, the grass spider, or the grasshopper? So that is the first one to eat the grass. But of these blue, well, what eats the primary consumer? What eats the grasshopper? Is it the frog? No, it's the spider. Yes. So since the spider eats this primary consumer, that's why we call this spider a secondary consumer. He's a second in line, second in the food chain. But that's not the final part. There's another animal that eats that spider. Remember, you could tell by the color that we have here. Well, there's only one more here, which is the frog. The frog would be the tertiary consumer. He's the final one in this line, this food chain that we have right here. So we got the producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer in this part. So now let's look at the second row. We got the tree, and again, what can help you is just look at the color. We got yellow, 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 yellow. So of all of these, which of these would you think, which of these would be the primary consumer, the first one to eat the tree? Do ants eat trees? No. Do anteaters eat trees? No. Caterpillar is the one that eats the leaves from the producer. So that would be the primary consumer, the one that eats from the producer. Then what would eat that? Would it be the anteater? No, they're called anteaters. That means they eat the ant, not caterpillar eaters. So it would have to be the ant. That would be the second in line because it eats the primary consumer. That's why it's a secondary consumer. Then finally, obviously, anteater eats ants, and that would be the next in line as a consumer, making it the tertiary consumer. That being said, let's look at the last one. This is all in the same color, red, 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 red. Okay, so which one would eat the little tiny, the corn pieces? Is it this eagle? I don't think so. Does a snake eat corn? That doesn't make sense. No, instead, it's the cute little tiny mouse. He is the primary consumer because he doesn't eat these other animals. He eats straight from the producer. That's why he's the primary consumer. But then something else eats that little tiny mouse. Is it the eagle? No, you can see the eagle's eating a snake. So it's not him. So the secondary consumer would be the snake that eats the primary consumer, and the tertiary consumer would be this eagle that eats the snake. So again, as we see, there is this food chain, how energy has been transferred from the sun to these plants, to these primary consumers. It's given to them. That's where they're able to move with all of that energy. But then that energy is given to the next group, the secondary consumers, because they ate these animals, giving them energy. And then it gives these tertiary animals some energy because they're eating from them. Okay, so we see that the energy is flowing towards them. But then also one thing we're going to look at a lot later is one of these in this food chain doesn't get eaten by anything else. Eagle. Yeah, and we would call this one, since it's not eaten by any other animal, we would call this an apex predator. Yeah, an apex predator. I don't know where. Anyway, that's called an apex predator, but we're going to talk about that a lot later. But here's our food chain game, and I hope you had a lot of fun with this one. But now that we've talked about all of these different types of transferring of energy from the sun to the animals, right? The food chain. Do you guys remember what we call the plants that give food for other animals?
Producers!
Very good. Oh, you're pretty smart. Do you remember what the animals are called that eat those producers and even eat other animals?
Consumers!
Exactly! You genius! just like me. Yeah, just like how we talked about. It comes from the sun to the producer, to the consumer, primary consumer, the first one, to the secondary, to the tertiary, and the fourth, well, not that far. But usually that's, again, called the food chain from the sun all the way to the final consumer. Speaking of the final consumer, there is one that is at the very end that doesn't get eaten by any other consumers, right? No other animal is trying to eat it, and these consumers are what we call the apex predator. Yeah. That's what I was about to say, but yeah, usually they're at the end of the food chain, and yeah, we call them the apex predator. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. You know, animals like lions. Nobody tries to eat a lion. Who eats a lion? Or like a bear, or like a killer whale or a shark, right? Again, since nothing else is trying to eat them, that's why we call them the apex predator. For the love of Scott, would you please just let me do my job? Sheesh.
Sorry.
I do. Apex predator. I got to say it this time. Yes, they're at the end of the food chain and usually nothing else is trying to eat it. So you know what? We're gonna make one for ourselves. We're gonna make a horned owl. And believe it or not, it's also an apex predator. Then let's make our horned owl, the apex predator. I got to do it this time. It's my job, not yours. Anyway, let's make one. We need these two things, the bag of clay and the bag full of stuff like the feathers, the pipe cleaners, the sunflower seeds, googly eyes. And yeah, that's all you need. That's all you need. Who knew? Anyway, what we want to do here is we want to basically take the clay and take it out. And a good way to do it is kind of push it out from the bottom. Don't try to kind of grab it from the inside, but just push from the bottom and push it towards the top. And then you'll see that it starts to come out. And then peel it like a banana. Okay, see? Easy peasy, squeezy lemon. Then what you want to do is you want to shape it kind of like a circle, but not too much like a circle. I'll show you what I mean. I like to first roll it in my hand like this. Roll it, roll it, roll it, roll it, roll it, and then flatten it just a bit. Okay, so it kind of makes a circle. Okay, but this is going to be the body shape of our horned owl. You can make yours whatever shape you want. A square, a circle, a triangle, yellow. That's not a shape. Anyway, whatever shape you want. Okay, but that's the first step. Then the next step is taking out everything that is inside of here to be the body parts of our owl. Okay, so come on out. Take the feathers, the googly eyes, and the pipe cleaners. First thing I like to do is I like to put on the eyes. So we're gonna put the eyes right over here. A cool thing I want to tell you about the eyes of the owl is that they can't move. They can't do this. They can't move their eyeballs. If they want to look that way, they got to move their whole. They have to move their whole head. If they want to look over here, they got to go to the point where my good old friend. He doesn't have a head. Just kidding. He was looking the other way. Look at that. They're able to do that. Can you turn your head all the way around? Did you see that? Did you see his head? He was able to turn his head all the way around, just like all of the owls. They're able to. Oh, I can't do it. But they can. They could turn their head all the way around to the other side because, remember, their eyeballs. They can't move everywhere like we can. They have to stay in a specific spot. But we have our eyeballs, even though the googly eyes, which kind of move around. But anyway, at least they have eyes. Second thing that we're gonna put on there is our sunflower seeds. You could either have it poke out or you could push it onto there, however you want to. But we got our beak. That is gonna be a beak for our owl. Usually the owls have a hook beak. Anyway, then the owls also have feet. like we do. They have toes. We don't call them toes, we call them talons. And you could kind of say they have 4 toes. Talons, that's how we call them. So they have 3 in the front and 1 in the back, as if it's like a thumb like this. And so we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna have these as its talons. All you need to do is just bend it right in the middle to make it in the shape of a V. Do the same thing with the other one. Bend it right in the middle, have it shaped like a V, and put it right on the bottom there. You could just either stick it in or push it on, either or. I'm gonna stick mine in. Okay, just stick it in. And see, got the cute little feet. Oh, look, cute little feet. We're not done. Then what we want to do is we want to give it some wings, because these owls, obviously being a bird, have some feathers. Okay, so these feathers are going to be their wings in a sense. And a really cool thing about owls is that they're actually very good at flying very silently. Their feathers are built to be such a way that they can fly very slowly down, snooping onto their prey. Okay, so these are going to be their feathers. I see here that we have some big feathers and then we have some smaller feathers. So what I like to do, oh, I missed one. There's one more inside of here. What I like to do is I like to take the big feathers as the wings and the little ones as kind of like the eyebrows, because it's all about eyebrows, guys. As you can see, my eyebrows are lush. What? Anyway, take the feathers and poke them in. Easy peasy, squeezy lemon. Take the other one, do the same thing. I like to also take the shaft. That's the middle part. Remember how we talked about that? And poke it in. We got the wings, and then these are gonna be the eyebrows, right? So just put them right on top of the eyeballs, like so. Here's 1, and here's 2. Hold the shaft, push it in, and oh, isn't it cute? It's so cute. It looks just like me. And here is our horned owl. If you want it to stand, I usually flatten the bottom, so if you just push it down, ta-da! And eventually this clay is gonna dry, it's gonna be nice and hard, and it's gonna hold everything still. So try your best not to move your owl around too much, and then when it's done, you could give him a name, like Manoa. Why wouldn't you pick any other name? That's like the best name ever. Anyway, let's put the owl to the side, and let's bring back our yeast beast experiment. And take a look. This one grew a fro just like me. But this one, oh no, nothing happened. So remember, in this one we have here, it says salt. We put salt in the yeast there, we put sugar in here. So which one do you think was the proper environment for the yeast to be able to thrive? Well, obviously it was the sugar. The sugar was good for the yeast. He was able to feast on that. But this one was deceased. Poor yeast. Oh, Jimmy. So again, the sugar, as we can see here, was very good for the yeast. It was a proper thing to put in it, and it was a great environment for it to be able to thrive. And this is just a short little thing to show us about the decomposer yeast that we have here. That was a lot that we learned about today concerning the living things, the animals, and even the food chain. So don't go crazy with your chains like Mega Manoa did, but as always, thank you so much for joining Mega Manoa with the high-touch, high-tech lesson, and until next time, I'll see you at home.